Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we are going to look at a story that Donna sent to me, and before I get into the story, I want to encourage anybody who has something pop up in their newspaper or online that they see and they think, wow, that would be a really good thing to hear Tony explain. Please feel free to use the email up there and send it to me. I would be more than happy to look at it, and if it's appropriate and if it won't violate YouTube's policies, I will certainly try to do a video on it for you. So with that introduction, let's talk about Ismail Lopez. So this is Ms. Linares, Claudia Linares, and Mr. Lopez. They have a picture there where they're looking together as a lovely little couple. And this photo was taken at some time prior to July 27, 2018. Here is what happened. This is the result of a civil trial where Linares, as the wife or widow of Lopez, brought a civil lawsuit against South Haven, Mississippi, and officers Durden and Mays, who were the two officers involved in the shooting, for shooting her husband, Ismail Lopez. The verdict came after a 4-day trial, and Claudia Linares was seeking $20 million in compensation from a South Haven, Mississippi jury. The verdict was the jurors did not believe that the use of force by officers Durden and Mays was excessive. So let's see if we can take a look at what the facts were with respect to the use of force. According to a report by the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, Lopez and Linares were in bed on July 24th when officers knocked on the door of their trailer. The officers were intending to serve a domestic violence warrant on a neighbor across the street, but got the addresses confused. Officers told state investigators they knocked on the door without identifying themselves. The door opened, a dog ran out, and Lopez pointed a rifle through the cracked door. Mays shot the dog, so Officer Mays shot the dog that ran out, and then, in quick succession, Durden fired multiple shots at Lopez. Well, if there is a rifle poking through the door, you can sort of understand why Durden might fire multiple shots. A third officer on the scene told investigators he heard Durden order Lopez to drop the rifle several times before shooting Lopez. There's no video. The 41-year-old man died from a bullet that struck him in the rear of his skull, more than 6 feet, 2 meters from the door. Police said he was running away. Now keep in mind he could also have been turning away because he realized that having poked the gun out there, that wasn't the smartest thing he'd ever done. Lawyers for Lopez, who died before he could be taken to a hospital, said he didn't point the gun at the officers. They said his fingerprints and DNA were not found on the rifle. Well, again, that sometimes happens. That happens particularly when you have a ruffled surface, particularly like an engraved stock on a firearm. And also if your hands are wet or greasy, a lot of times you don't leave fingerprints. So it is completely consistent that there might not be fingerprints and there might not be DNA. It is unlikely that the MBI would have tested for DNA on that, so I suspect the DNA test was done by the plaintiff's attorneys long afterwards, and that could also explain why that happened. Now, I'm speculating there. I don't know that for sure. They say when the investigators got there, the rifle was 6 feet away, and their theory, the plaintiff's theory, was that Durden shot Lopez because the officer was reacting to Mays shooting the dog. So when the state investigators arrived, they found Lopez lying dead in a prone position with his hands cuffed behind his back in the middle of a living room. A rifle was laying on the couch. After the shooting, the grand jury declined to indict anyone in the case. So, what makes this case notable, and why do you think it received media attention? Well, it received media attention because undoubtedly the first group of lawyers representing the city of South Haven had been dropped on their head as children, because They made an absolutely ridiculous argument to a federal judge, and this case was tried in federal court. Here is the argument that they made. They had previously argued that Lopez had no civil rights to violate because he was a Mexican man living in the United States illegally and faced deportation orders and criminal charges for illegally possessing guns. Now, if you are in this country, the doctrine of comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, not C-O-M-E-D-Y, although sometimes it can be kind of funny. Comity says that you have to treat the citizen of another country the same way you would treat one of your citizens when it comes to application of the laws. In other words, there can't be a separate standard for convicting a Mexican person of assault than there is for a natural-born United States citizen. And that's a good rule, I think. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and makes it possible for me to continue to do this. That's it. That's the commercial. As you might imagine, when that argument was presented to this federal judge, he said, "No, I'm sorry, boys, civil rights apply to everybody." And that was the thing that the media took out of this case, that the city had tried to get out of this by virtue of saying that I didn't have any civil rights. Well, everybody has certain civil rights. And I think it did the city of South Haven a disservice to have that become the underlying theme of this story. And of course, when people have picked it up and talked about it, what they've said is, well, obviously the citizens of Mississippi feel that Mexican people shouldn't have any civil rights because of the way they handle this. Well, I think we need to sort of set aside some of the hyperbole here and look at the facts. One of the things that is very important for lawyers who are selecting cases to try is you absolutely positively have to have a huggable client. Now, huggable doesn't just mean grandmotherly that, you could go up and give a hug to. I'm talking about, generally speaking, a client who is on the right side of the issues. He doesn't have a criminal past. He was not engaged in taking drugs at the time of an incident. He wasn't drunk, didn't abuse his wife. All these kinds of things are very important. And the reason that they're very important is because any bad thing you have done ever in your life is probably going to become fair game at a civil trial. Had Mr. Lopez been exceptionally lucky and survived being shot, he would have had to have testified at his trial as the plaintiff. He would have had to have said, they came in, they kicked the door down, they shot me, whatever else he might have said. He then becomes subject to cross-examination, and the cross-examination would have gone something like this. Isn't it true that you have deportable charges? Yes. Isn't it true you were charged with, possession of guns illegally in this country? Yes. Isn't it true you're a member of MS-13? Why, no, that's not true. And it probably isn't true. But that's the way that cross-examination goes. It's the lawyer testifying through the witness, not the witness testifying. And if there are bad things, they're going to come out. Now, in this case, Linares is actually the plaintiff. So she's not subject to cross-examination on his past. But the lawyers here who are representing her might also have been dropped on their head at birth because they asked for $20 million in compensation. Now, this is being tried to a jury in Oxford, Mississippi, but federal courts pulled their jury pools from a wide area. And there are going to be people who are farmers. There are going to be people who work at the Piggly Wiggly. There are going to be people who work at the video store and at Best Buy and other places like that who make pretty close to minimum wage. Now, we don't know what Ismail Lopez did for a living, but I'm assuming he wasn't a famous painter. I'm assuming he wasn't a famous novelist. I'm also assuming he didn't invent something that was worth $20 million, such that him being killed would have deprived his wife of $20 million. So when you come into a rural area where, as one of my old partners used to say, a dollar is as big as a Ferris wheel, when you go in there and you ask for $20 million, you have already stunk up your case. And that's, I think, what they did here. They stunk up their case at the beginning by asking for an amount of money that was never reasonable given this situation. Now, maybe some of that is for punitive damages, but again, you're probably not going to get punitive damages against a state actor. And the fact of the matter was there was a rifle recovered. The testimony was pretty consistent with the fact that he produced the rifle first and that the officers reacted to that, and that he also released a dog on the officers, causing the dog to be killed, because dogs can be a pretty ugly threat to an officer in one of those altercations. The gestalt of all of this was that this is not a case that I would have ever taken. It's not a case I would have ever recommended to an attorney that I know to take. I would have told Ms. Linares, if she'd come to me, I don't think you have a good case. And it has nothing to do with your loss, because I know that you've lost a great deal here. I'm sure you were very much in love with your husband. But the bottom line is there are too many warts on this case. You're not going to be able to go to a jury in this county, in this city, and get that kind of money. That's what I would have done if it had been me. But they took the case forward, and God bless them for doing that. And as a result, the state, or in this case, South Haven, won. And the reason they won is because, one, they overreached, the plaintiffs overreached, and two, they didn't have a huggable client. While Mrs. Linares may very well have been huggable, in a wrongful death case like this, a violation, what I would call an excessive force case, it is the person who wound up being shot who actually winds up being the client that has to be huggable. Now, if you happen to have a preacher on his way to Sunday school, whistling "How Great Thou Art" when two police officers come up and shoot him, that's a little different situation. But that's not what we had here. And I think the media has done a disservice by painting this as the Mississippi juries found that he didn't have civil rights. He clearly had civil rights, they just didn't think they were violated. So that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you found this interesting, thought-provoking. If you would, drop me a comment down below. Tell me what you think. I would love to hear what you think about this case. As always, if you have the opportunity today, do something nice for someone. And, as always, I will catch you down here at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.